back. This is Boomer Life on CL650.
Sugar. Oh, honey, honey.
George Gordon back on Boomer Life here on CL650, and we're talking to the naturopathic physicians, Dr. Larry Chan and Dr. Alex Chan from the Naturopathic Medical Center in Vancouver. We've been talking about the role of the integrative approach, the naturopathic approach to dealing with wellness, and we've been talking specifically about some of the great advances that are being seen in helping people who are fighting cancer. This is something that we promised a little earlier in the show, was to talk about what's called IPC therapy.
IPT.
IPT. You see, that's why I didn't go into medicine. Who would like to start?
I think that we kind of ended that last segment on a good note in terms of that sugar comment that I made. So what I was talking about was that one of the things we see is that we try to have most cancer patients avoid sugar in their diet, and then also any sort of exposure there. The reason being that we see that cancer cells have a very particular type of metabolism. Unlike normal cells, cancer cells prefer to not use oxygen, and they love using sugar as a food source. And so why we want to deprive cancer cells of sugar in general is because sugar directly feeds those cells and increases the cancer cell growth. When we talk about something like IPT therapy, what it stands for is insulin potentiation therapy. And most people probably hear about insulin in terms of diabetics, but the other Dr. Chan will talk a little bit more about IPT therapy itself and kind of what we're doing with it at Integrative.
Yeah, the exciting thing about this is really exciting because IPT therapy is not done in Canada much at this point in time, and that's why we're so happy to have it at our center. It's done much more in the United States and in Europe as well. It's been around since 1930s, and it's starting to gain momentum in terms of more published papers will be coming out after about a 15-year period of research. But essentially, the exciting thing about it is that what's the worst thing about allopathic chemotherapy for treatment of cancers? It's the fact that it kills cancer cells, which is fantastic, but it also kills good cells. And that leaves the person sick and not doing as well. And the reason why it's occurring is that because the chemotherapy has to be given at high doses to break through the cells of the cancer cells to get into the cancer cells. And what Alex was saying is that cancer cells love sugar because their cell walls have many more insulin receptor sites. So meaning that the insulin acts to unlock the key of the cell walls of the cancer cells, so chemotherapy or naturopathic anti-cancer drugs can go inside the cells more easily when you open the door with insulin. So the insulin potentiation is that we apply a little bit of insulin to the body, drops the blood sugar down. The cancer cells are now starving for oxygen, starving for sugar, and then we put in a substance that's anti-cancer in low doses. So whether it's chemotherapy they do in the States or natural anti-cancer agents, we piggyback that with a bit of glucose, and the cancer cells are now starving for this glucose, so it grabs it, the sugar, and grabs it into the cells.
You're basically using that cancer mechanism against it, that sugar-loving ability you're using against the cancer cells, because they see the insulin and they think, oh goody, there's going to be a meal coming. And then instead of getting a meal, they get hit with either chemotherapy or natural anti-cancer agents. Right. So what we're offering at Integrative is we're offering the ability to use this IPT, insulin potentiation therapy, alongside natural anti-cancer agents, some which we've been doing for a long period of time, like high-dose vitamin C. But it makes those treatments so much more effective because the cancer cells, become that much more receptive to actually responding and being killed by these natural anti-cancer agents. And like we said, a lot of the research has been done originally on chemotherapy being used with insulin potentiation therapy. Unfortunately, that's not so widely available, but we can borrow from a lot of the literature and the research on insulin potentiation with chemo to see how that effect and the effectiveness applies also to natural agents.
Yeah, the insulin potentiating therapy really, in a nutshell, is you can give low-dose chemotherapy. That's how it started. And the low-dose chemotherapy is an order of, and they did research Some published studies show that in breast cancer treatment and using a drug methotrexate for that, the amount of chemo they required with IPT as a therapy to piggyback the chemo was they used 1/10 the dosage of the chemotherapy, yet it was 10,000 times stronger on the cancer cells.
And then obviously if you're using less of the cancer drug, the
body
after effects and the side effects to the body are going to be less.
That's
much
1/10 the side effects.
Yeah,
as
1/10.
well.
And also the effect is every bit as good, if not stronger. And if we can piggyback natural medicines with it, we'll have great results with that as well, which is the exciting thing for us.
Now, I know that you folks are leading the charge, or part of that leading charge to bring this in to be better understood and put in use here in Canada. You say it's been in use in the U.S. and in Europe. What are the results? Is it playing out to what you hoped for?
So the biggest study, like I said, we can oftentimes borrow from the research they've done with insulin potentiation and chemotherapy. The biggest study that's come out to date is by a gentleman, Dr. Forsyth, and what he looks at is primarily late-stage cancer, so stage 4, which unfortunately at this point with conventional chemotherapy, they see that stage 4 cancers, if you excluding skin cancers, the 5-year survival rate is only 2.5%. That's pretty dismal.
Wow.
When you look at his trials using only stage 4 patients, he did, I believe it's 500 patients.
Over the last 10
Over the last
years,
10, 15 years that he's tracked them. The 5-year survival rate that he's seeing using insulin potentiation therapy with chemo and then other natural agents alongside of it, he's seeing the 5-year survival rate up at around 40%. So astronomically.
40%
yes.
compared to
2.5%. Yes. So massively different, much more beneficial. On top of which the quality of life is so much higher in that success rate as well.
So I have to ask the question: is this new line of thinking, these discoveries, these studies, is it being met by the allopathic people here in North America or in Canada, I guess specifically? Are they embracing this, interested? Are they still resistant to the potential here?
I think it's so far out of their standard of protocol. That's part of the process. Is cancer is a very protocol and standard of care basis, and at this point in time, it's going to be probably quite a while when the word comes out, more published papers are in place before they'll embrace it in any shape or form.
And there's a lot of pushback, especially because Dr. Forsyth, who I mentioned, he is an oncologist. He's a medical oncologist. There's been a lot of resistance that his work has been met with, specifically from a lot of the pharmaceutical companies, because what you're now talking about is perhaps one bag of chemotherapy, which would be worth $10,000 as a drug to the pharmaceutical company. I only need 1/10 of that, please. So.
Well, certainly, I know that this will be talked about increasingly. Certainly, you'll be talking to your patients at the center, educating, I guess, reaching out to other naturopaths. Mm-hmm. Is this being more widely accepted in the naturopathic field?
I think naturopaths have in Canada for a long time been very interested in that. No one is doing it except us at this point, and it's a very difficult certification process we've gone through to be able to bring this to Canada. So we're excited to be one of the few naturopaths to be able to do this.
I think we're also well placed to do it because we already had so much other experience with oncology care and a full staff that was already offering things like, because insulin potentiation therapy, we administer it through intravenous route. So you need to already have a setup with an office and lab technicians and whatnot that can already accommodate doing IV therapy. So this is just another form of IV therapy.
Okay, so intravenous. I picture myself in the hospital with the bag dripping down. Is that what we're talking about?
So obviously not in a hospital setting, but it's same idea that you're getting a vein access. We would set you up with usually using a catheter, get vein access, and then we would infuse whatever the substance is. In the case of insulin potentiation therapy, it's a small dose of insulin, and then following it by usually not the same solutions they'd use in the hospital, but things like vitamin C can be infused intravenously and has a different effect than what you'd take orally, or something like turmeric or cumin can be done IV and is a much more potent form than what you could get orally.
Well, we haven't yet had a chance to talk much about oxidative therapies, and I think it's important. I'd like to spend a little bit more time, so why don't we deal with that in segment 4 coming up? Some great information about IPT therapy. Have you had a chance to put some of this information at integrative.ca?
Yeah, you will find that on the website as well.
And you'll be, as you study more about it and fight, I guess if that's the right word, to make it accepted as part of the Canadian medical treatment system. I guess that's what you have to go through or are you able to do it yet?
We can do it, and we're excited by it because it's going to just be able to help so many people that we can't help at this point, as well as with IPT therapy.
Unfortunately, obviously sending people to do it with chemotherapy only in Toronto at this point, and not something that we'll ever be doing at our clinic.
Well, at least there is an alternative, there is an option. We'll be back and we'll be talking more about oxidative therapies and some of the other work that is being done at the very important Integrative Naturopathic Medical Center in Toronto. We have Dr. Larry Chan and Dr. Alex Chan here. We'll be right back with Boomer Life on CL 650.
Celebrating the baby boomer lifestyle. This is Boomer Life on CL 650.